You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Global Trade This Week. I am your host, Doug Draper, and Pete Mento is on assignment this week. So we're asking our producer and wizard, Keenan Brew, to jump in with us today. So Keenan, thank you so much for filling in.
Absolutely. Glad to be on this side of the camera here with you today.
Yeah, that's great. So I was saying on the intro that Keenan can't thank himself because he's with the CAP Logistics program. So I'll do that on behalf of our team. But again, this show would not be possible without CAP Logistics and Keenan. He's the guy that gets a lot of heat from Pete on the back end. But Keenan, you and the team do a great job. So I encourage our listeners to visit caplogistics.com. So being a short week, we decided to keep the show a little short to follow in footstep. And so we're each going to have one topic and then maybe make a couple of comments toward the end and just rock and roll. So Keenan, with your permission, you mind if I just jump in and get going?
Let's go for it. Yeah, hop on in.
Awesome. So this idea is not mine, but we always like to comment on things that we read. So this week I caught a LinkedIn article that was posted that made a reference to, is supply chain management and the supply chain degree the new MBA, right? So the MBA is a big deal in the business world and has the last 18 months really driven the concept of a degree, an undergraduate and master's degree in supply chain logistics and technology, kind of the new thing that everybody's looking for. And when I read the article, I was like, absolutely yes. I think that is very relevant, and I think that is truly the new MBA. Couple of things, Keenan, that I wanted to point out. Number one is if you look at the undergraduate degree program across the country, probably 10 or 15 years ago, you had kind of the big boys that had embraced those programs, which usually fall under the business school. I'm not going to name them all, so don't be offended for those that are listening, but Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, all these big programs that are out there. Tennessee has a great program. But you're seeing, kind of mid-majors coming up, and every institution is coming up with some sort of undergraduate program. So the academic world and academia is understanding that and putting out some great logisticians to take it to the next level, which I think is terrific. And I was going to come up with this analogy, which I'm still going to do, Keenan, and I'm not going to have very good accents on this, but I was thinking last night that this is like an episode of The Simpsons, right? So you got Mr. Burns. This is the old school. Mr. Burns is talking to Smithers, and he essentially says, get all of these companies and put them in the pit of serpents and have them fight it out, and let's make sure we have the cheapest rate possible, and let's make sure it's a win for us. Right? And then Smithers comes back and says, well, that's not really how things are going nowadays. And there's kind of a new way to find the right companies out there to support our logistics team. So Smithers and Mr. Burns banter back and forth. And then the camera does a flash over and kind of stops in front of Homer for like 2 seconds, right? And Homer's got a mustard stain on his shirt. He's got a Duff beer, and it pauses, which makes you think like, oh my God, is this the new logistician? And the answer is no, because it focuses over on Lisa, right, who is the consummate individual that is the new logistician. So Mr. Burns has come into a reality that forcing companies to compete against each other, beat them down, a one-sided relationship is not how this industry is going to grow in the future. It's the way that Lisa Simpson would approach it. And I think that demographic, that mindset, and that entrepreneurial and tech-savvy approach to life is going to make our industry that much better and get away from a win-lose mentality, which is kind of the generation that I grew up in, to a win-win and really understanding that collectively we can do more together than anything else. So is supply chain logistics the new MBA? Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that. I don't know, Keenan, what do you think?
I love that take. I had not heard the equivalent of an MBA for logistics or businesses looking at logistics programs as an equivalent for an MBA, though it makes sense. I know you've been involved with logistics education for quite a while, and I've gotten to see many different university programs throughout the country through our work on the Denver Transportation Club and Operation Stimulus, and seeing all these programs grow. Though, yes, over the last couple of years, there's been an increase in maybe respect for an industry that often was behind the scenes. People don't necessarily see it until now that there's more issues. Then more people on the C levels are talking about it. And hey, why is our supply chain, why is our whole business model so dependent on importing from this country? And wait, there's no containers. What can we do? We have no options. So they want options. So it seems that there has been a growth of students going into those types of programs, but especially that drive from the industry of, hey, we need these people who have this unique skill set. And I love the painting you kind of set up there with the Simpsons and how the old school, maybe hardcore capitalist of, competition all the way down. Yeah, that's probably not going to keep working as companies go under if they can't make it. And that's not helpful for people's supply chains. They need to be reliable. They need to have plans and options over the long term. Also love the analogy with Lisa, because in logistics, you have to have people that are doing the homework. You can't just make something up or sell something and not deliver. There's actually processes and the logistics that go into sourcing and transporting, and internationally, especially paperwork, customs, all this sort of stuff in a constantly changing world. You need those people to do the homework. So I thought that was a great painting. And yeah, well, I hadn't heard that. I kind of like the analogy to the MBA that it is an important skill set. And also, often people describe the MBA, it's not just what you learn about business, it's the people you get to know. I imagine these businesses similarly would be looking for these types of specially skilled individuals who have experience with supply chains, but also maybe have contacts at people at other companies. How is this similar manufacturer handling the situation? Or we need access to this type of lane that there's not a lot of good public access. Who do you know? What can we do in order to make business happen? So yeah, it's a really fascinating take.
Yeah, the collaboration, I think, is just a mindset that exists in the younger generation that doesn't with the older generation. And just literally right now, Keenan, I was thinking about this. Last comment here is that when I graduated from college, I had a job where I visited a lot of college campuses across the country. I think I visited like 75, big schools, small schools, you name it. And there was one school up in Michigan. At the time, it was called GMI, which stood for General Motors Institute. Since then, it's been changed to Kettering, who was a gentleman that worked at General Motors and was very influential in the development. But here's their model, right? So there's Kettering A and Kettering B, so like an A section and a B section. And while Kettering A is in school, Kettering B is working alongside engineers and technicians at General Motors, so they get the real world experience. And then they do that for a semester, and then they flip-flop. So A comes to Flint, Michigan, and does their book work, while A section goes and works alongside it at GM. So it's real-world experience. It's kind of the book smarts and the street smarts, and they've been doing that literally for decades. But because of that approach, I think it's going to become more prevalent with other institutions. And I think the logistics supply chain in the automotive industry is going to come out of this a little bit ahead of the game with others because they have that collaborative approach. And so I was just thinking that book smarts and street smarts, I think, is a phenomenal situation going on up there in Michigan. I think they're going to be the leaders when it comes out of it. And I think you'll see a lot more of that collaboration. So anyway.
Yeah, great point. I think from my personal experience in studying economics, so it wasn't quite a logistics specific program, and we did not have a partnership as some of the programs now do, like that one where they're partnered with industry. And it was definitely, you thought you studied a lot in college and you do a lot of work and the homework, and it's all very academic. And then it's a fire hose getting into the industry of, oh, you have to learn this programming language, or there's these types of rules you never heard of. And so I think it's smart and would help both the industry and the students have kind of that hybrid part academic, part theory, how things should be, and also what is it like day to day in the real world when you're making F-150s and the normal just in time, and now maybe a little strategic reserve on microchips, and or when something goes unexpectedly wrong and you need to solve in order to keep the plant running and then get back up to speed. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm excited to see that there are more of those collaborative type of programs going on out there where it's not just, hey, you want to be in logistics? Here's a program that isn't really tied to the modern world, and hopefully you get a job afterwards, but tying in there directly. And that probably also helps with sourcing too, whether you're a business looking to hire some talented people and obviously students looking for jobs, those types of programs would certainly help.
Yeah, for sure. And I would encourage our audience, if anybody has any experience with GMI back in the day when I was there, and Kettering, if they have any comments or feedback on that model, please let us know in the comments field on the program. So cool. All right, Keenan, what do you got for us this week?
Yeah, so like yours, the original idea came from someone else, and I'll post a link in the show notes here to Wendover Productions. I've mentioned it once before when I've been on. They do great little mini documentaries on various things, but a lot of them are in the logistics or infrastructure, transportation space. They were recently describing the airline's business travel problem, where you have a mix of customers, and a lot of people would think of, oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to buy my ticket months in advance. And those types of people, they're buying early and they are price sensitive. They would choose a different airline if it's significantly cheaper. However, business travelers going for sales calls, conferences, site inspections, et cetera, they generally are a little bit more price inelastic. They don't change their behavior if the prices go up or down as much, and they generally buy tickets a little bit closer to the time they need them, the week before or the day before. And that was a significant part of airlines' bottom line. And so, like other areas we've seen with the pandemic, there could have been an existing trend of more and more people switching to teleconferencing. I remember when I worked at TD Ameritrade almost a decade ago now, they spent several $100,000 to put in this Polycom teleconferencing system, and they were going to make money even back then in not flying their executives around and just doing these teleconference calls. Now it's no longer a multi-$100,000 investment. Anyone with a computer, even just a cell phone, can get on MS Teams, Google Meet, Skype, Zoom, et cetera, and there's still business travel happening. But perhaps this pandemic has accelerated that trend of, maybe it's not worth sending someone to another state. There's uncertainty about new strains, or it's just, we now have this better system in place and we have, protocols for just meeting online. So I think there might be more and more people doing that type of remote work, even on site inspections. The new technologies coming out in oil and gas industry or manufacturing, where you can have an expert in a totally different state look at the situation or guide another technician on ground and what to do without flying them out there. So the idea is that the market's just changing a little bit. There's still tourism going on, and we've been seeing that come back online after the worst of the pandemic, but we may not be seeing as much of the business traveler return to their behaviors pre-pandemic. And so what does that mean for all of us in the logistics industry who use those commercial airlines to put cargo on? Will that mean higher rates? Seems like yet another force adding to the overall macro pie that could mean logistics is just getting more expensive, and people have to be all the more intelligent with their business models if they're going to turn a profit at the end of the day. So I don't know if you've been seeing anything on that front, or in your experience, or hearing people no longer traveling, starting to travel again. What are your takes on that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good point. And the other thing I'd like to say is, not the other thing, but I'll lead off to say business travelers are probably a little bit more well-behaved than, than somebody.
They know the routine.
They know the routine. They're not going to Vegas for a weekend with the boys or heading down to Mexico. So I think from that aspect, the friendly skies are a little bit more safe and less chaotic. But The one thing that I made mention of is that, I've been in sales all my life, and if you did not take the time as a sales rep to go visit a client to show the commitment to what the partnership and what you're selling them, the fact that you weren't there in person was a detriment to what you were selling. And now it's not. I mean, the fact that you are respecting the situation and the pandemic that we're in, saying, hey, we're going to do our presentation to you remotely. 18 months ago, maybe that was looked down upon. Now it could even be something that is welcome for a variety of reasons. But I think that's the biggest thing is, I don't think it's coming back. I think that the business world is more in tune and willing to accept a virtual presentation, and it's not going to be a demerit or held against you for not being in person. It could be an asset. And I like your comment about the final thing I would say is the comment about retrofitting airplanes. It's a depreciating asset, and that thing needs to generate revenue. And if you don't have business travelers in business class and first class, you need a new revenue stream. So we've seen that. There's been lots of articles about retrofitting, pulling out seats, and having makeshift cargo planes, which is interesting. We'll have to see how that pans out. That's not an inexpensive flip of the switch to retrofit those planes, but I think we'll continue to see that for sure.
Yeah. It was wild during the heat of the pandemic, seeing planes that were still outfitted for passengers having no passengers and just seats filled up with boxes and webbing holding all the stuff in place on the actual plane where normally passengers would sit. And so I would encourage listeners, especially since it is a shorter episode today, if you want to hear more, I'll link to that Wendover video. They go in depth on it. And it's not done and over. I think you bring up a good point that still exists. There is a value of meeting someone face to face for big client relationships, big on-site situations. That's still going to be there, but maybe there was a section of questionable ones of I'm just making a sales call where now, to your point, the person you're making the sales call on might appreciate if you just do an online call and don't come in from out of state. And it depends, So yeah, we'll see what's going to go on with this situation, but the dynamics are changing.
Yeah, for sure. Troy is usually a big face-to-face guy. That's why he's over my shoulder every day, but we'll just leave it at that. So as we committed, short and sweet, we just decided to handle one topic each. We'll be back next Monday for another edition of Global Trade This Week, and I would encourage our audience to visit caplogistics.com. Because when Keenan's not front and center, he's behind the scenes pushing the buttons, and this show would not happen without them. So Keenan, thank you very much, my friend. I'm glad that you're part of the team, and I'm glad that I can call you a friend and a colleague. So with that, everybody, I think we're done for this week. Thanks for listening to Global Trade This Week. We'll see you on Monday. Take care. Bye, Keenan.